So now we're going to start working on the head, doing a high-res version. I've made two UV groups, one in different areas of the UV ratio, so I can do polygroups in ZBrush, and another which is the normal final one, which we'll use to bake the normal maps from the previous tutorial. So I'm going to place the head on ZBrush. I'll subdivide it without smoothing, and I will create polygroups using the UV layout. I'm also going to export the hair and the eyes so I can use them as reference while I'm working. So now I'm going to start sculpting the overall details of the head, trying not to be too localized and always doing an overall pass on everything. First trying to get the general muscle shapes and bone structure, and once I'm happy with that, I'll go in and I'll focus on ears, eyes, nose and mouth. It's always good to isolate the areas that you're not working on so you don't get affected. Also jump between different brushes using the quad brush, the square brush I mean, and a very thin one and the standard brush, and then pinching. This will give you some really nice strokes while working. It helps on the detail and makes it more realistic. Throughout the video I'm going to go speed up and slow down depending on how relevant what I'm doing is. So always use your concept art as a reference. Defining muscles, always loose. Not too worried if it's the exact spot where the line should be. Also, I'm not paying attention to the proportions since we already have a quite solid base mesh. And now I'm going to focus on the ear. I'll select it from the rest, isolate it, and start sculpting it out. Also, the concept is quite simple in terms of details, at least the details we're doing right now. So I'm going to get a picture of a real ear and use it as a reference so I can go further in and do some extra details, trying to maintain the concept but still making sure there's enough information there to make it work. Also, you should mask the inside when working on the outside and mask the outside when working on the inside to make sure you don't push polys from one side to the other. Once you're finished, make sure you copy the details from one side to the other using the Smart Reseam feature. And now back to working on the overall features, the wrinkles on the forehead, making sure we get that nice hard edge, and start to focus on the nose. Always following the concept, making sure it's as close as possible. Right now the big proportions are not important. Also, we're using a very solid low-res base, which should match the concept as much as possible, so we know we're working inside the boundaries of the original template. It's always good to isolate the area you're working on so you can really zoom in and work on the details. Also, the inside of the nose is slightly pinched because it's a very thin area, just like the ear. So this is something we'll have to go in, go to the lower res, fix the problem, and then go back to the higher res and smooth it all out. This is something that happens a lot when you have really tight geometry like the eyes, nose, corner of the lips, and it's something you'll have to get used to and comfortable with in going back, fixing it, and cleaning the topology, because this, when you bake the normal maps, if this is not clean, This is going to create a lot of mess. You'll see later on when I'm working on the lips, we'll have the same issue, and that's something I'll have to go over and over again and clean it up really tight. And then work on the overall proportions of the nostrils, making sure they are matching correctly with the concept. And then we go back to the face, working on the details a bit more. Muscle structure, seeing how the nose and the ears match with what we have now. And then focus on the mouth. I'll use the smooth groups I created so I can start working on the bottom. Fix the pinching on the sides. Make some fatness on the lips. And then go to the top and do the same thing. And now the exact same thing on the upper lips. Once both of them are quite close to what we want, then we can work around and make sure they match with the profile and side view in terms of how much each one is more forward or backwards, and what's the relationship between each other. Also with the mask we can easily move the lower lip without touching the upper lip and the other way around. So now I'm tweaking the area around the lips and that little bridge we have under the nose. Always looking at the concepts, trying to see how fat the lips are or not. This is quite tricky because there's not much detail on the concept there. So we have to try to guess and estimate what we think looks right, which is a really nice thing to do. And now once we're done, we're going to work on the overall look of the lips. So we're going to make selections. We can move the upper lips and then the lower lips until the thickness is just like the concept. You also see there's a slight nudge on the corners because of the way I was working, which we'll need to go on and fix now. This usually happens if you divide something into upper and lower. So once we have this done, we're going to focus just on the corners and trying to remove that wrinkle we have there. So now that I have this structure more defined, I'm going in and I'm going to work on the corners of the mouth. Make a selection, I'll zoom in and start with the low res, making sure that the low res is clean and not pushed in any strange way. And then go up on the subdivision levels and making sure each one has a very smooth curve. You can see where the pinching happened. And now it's much easier to smooth it out. And once this is done, we can comfortably work at this level with all mesh showing, and we won't have any pinching happening anymore. Now we'll start working on the eye area. Going once again and working on the bone structure around the eye. And then isolating it and working on the eyebrows and the eyelids. This is one of the most important areas of the model. And if you don't get this right, it will be very, very noticeable. So it's worth spending some time and making sure it's really right.